They are moving on, but where is Julio going to move on to?
Julio got a DM yesterday from this guy who plays quarterback down in Tampa, just sliding into Julio's DMs. Effectively said, hey, come on down to the sunshine here in Tampa and let's be great together.
You're going the wrong way. Double shot espresso. Double shot espresso, then Julio Jones. Come on. Come on, come on, come on.
I already know what my comment section's gonna say.
Mike, who cares? Julio Jones is always injured. He barely was able to play for the Tennessee Titans last year. Why is this such a big deal?
Well, we're gonna break it all down for you because I get night terrors every single time Tom Brady somehow gets himself a player that is a future Hall of Famer in our league on his team, even though he's not necessarily in his prime anymore. So before we get to the content, guys, we had 100K followers on TikTok. If you want shorter 1-minute versions of this content straight to your device, follow me on TikTok and on Instagram at Mikerophone NFL and at The Flight Mike. And on top of that, we are running a fantasy football league with my Twitter followers. All you have to do is go and favorite my tweet that says,
who's interested in being in a fantasy football league?
Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? So today was the start of training camp, and we got a bunch of crazy stuff that's happened so far, like Aaron Rodgers pulling up to training camp looking like a carbon copy of Nicolas Cage. In addition to this, we found out that Seattle Seahawks halfback Chris Carson is officially retiring from the NFL, and the Seattle Seahawks did him right. He failed his physical. As a result, he's going to be entitled to a good amount of compensation. So a lot has gone on so far, and that's before I even get to the Damon Arnett stuff that you guys have been requesting me to do a video on that will be coming out later today. Yes, you're in store for a 3-video day from me today. So this past off season has been such a roller coaster ride for all Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans. I mean, within a 1-month span, you had Tom Brady potentially trying to take you to the Super Bowl and being pretty damn close, might I add. People forget how close he was to finishing off a crazy comeback against the eventual Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. And then very shortly after, he decided to announce his retirement. 40 days after he announced his retirement, Tom Brady decided right before free agency started to come back. Now, what's interesting is immediately you saw a bunch of Tampa Bay Buccaneers players shifting course, going back and reaffirming their commitment to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In addition to that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had to address the wide receiver position. Yes, they brought back Chris Godwin, which props to them. They did right by Chris Godwin after he sustained a torn ACL. But in addition to that, they went ahead and signed Russell Gage, very underrated acquisition from the Atlanta Falcons. But that's not the only Atlanta Falcons player or ex-Atlanta Falcon Tom Brady was targeting. Through all of this, we were hearing rumors that Tom Brady was trying to recruit Julio Jones to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We heard it months and months ago, and we didn't really pay it much mind because we knew at the same time that Julio Jones was going to take his time before coming back. Bear in mind that this is a guy that really hasn't had an opportunity to rehabilitate a very difficult injury that's been hampering him since his final season with the Atlanta Falcons. And last year, when he joined the Tennessee Titans, the expectations for him were really, really high. I think it's kind of unfair because people just vaguely look at Julio Jones and say,
oh, he has injuries.
Julio sustained a very difficult hamstring injury in week 4 against the Green Bay Packers. And typically when people hear hamstring injury, they think, okay, maybe after a week or so, he'll be able to come back. The thing is, James Harden went through the same exact thing when he was on the Brooklyn Nets last year. During playoff time, he was forced to play with a hamstring strain, which does take some time to get over. And it seems like Julio Jones was suffering from a very similar type of injury, a thigh hamstring strain that was graded number 2. And despite that, he really did his best to still play games during his time with the Atlanta Falcons, and then he would get traded to the Tennessee Titans, which was rightfully so because he was getting paid a ton of money from the Atlanta Falcons, and the Falcons were headed towards a rebuild. But when he got to the Tennessee Titans, he wasn't necessarily able to stay healthy as well. He did play in 10 games, he did record 31 receptions, but he was far from the Julio Jones that we all know and love. So what we've been hearing is Julio has been very focused on rehabilitating his injury, and we don't necessarily know the state of his injury currently. So originally what we all thought was Julio Jones was either going to join the Green Bay Packers or reunite with Matt Ryan on the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, there were the rumors that Tom Brady was trying to convince him to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it wasn't until today that we got verification that Julio Jones is actually joining the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So according to Adam Schefter, 7-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Julio Jones is signing a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers per source. The soon-to-be 45-year-old Tom Brady now will have a chance to throw to the 33-year-old Julio Jones. Julio Jones now wants to try to win a Super Bowl with the man who prevented him from winning one, and Julio Jones drew interest from, amongst others, the Green Bay Packers and the Buccaneers, but Tampa was the most aggressive in giving its QB a new offensive weapon. So I already know what most of the people that are watching this video are gonna say. Mike, who cares? Julio Jones is injury prone. Let's put that to the side for a second, because I just get this existential dread every single time Tom Brady gets himself a player that used to be a Pro Bowler and obviously has his best days behind him. I mean, just off the top of my head, the most famous example of this is clearly Randy Moss, but if we're just gonna sit back and think of all the times Tom Brady got himself a former Pro Bowler, we have to think of Josh Gordon, who put together a remarkable season during his first season with the New England Patriots with 720 receiving yards, 18 yards per reception during his time there and 3 touchdowns. Although he wasn't able to sustain his tenure with the New England Patriots, still, during the brief time that he was there, it was still fairly impressive what he was able to do there. Obviously, there was Chad Ochocinco. His best years were clearly behind him, and that didn't work out. And now you have Julio Jones, which, if you did want to sign Julio Jones to come in and be your wide receiver 1, then I would be a little skeptical, but you have to understand that nothing here is necessarily changing. Wide receiver 1 is Mike Evans. Wide receiver 2 is Chris Godwin. Wide receiver 3 is probably going to be Russell Gage because he hasn't necessarily had injury issues. I'm thinking that wide receiver 4, or even if they want to get cute and crazy with it, maybe even tight end, which I don't know the likelihood of that, but still, I'm just gonna float it out there because I've seen crazy stuff like that happen, could be Julio Jones. Personally, I just get existential dread every time Tom Brady gets himself a former Pro Bowl wide receiver. I mean, Antonio Brown being the latest example of this. Yeah, he didn't return to 1,000 yards per season form, but if he was to play a full season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he would have been capable of doing so. Regardless, Tom Brady was able to get Antonio Brown to commit to a team, lock in, and win his only Super Bowl of his entire career. So what I'm trying to say is, this doesn't necessarily have to be a signing where Julio Jones returns to Pro Bowl form. If he's able to stay healthy, which I'm hoping he will be, but there's no way you could really predict that. My assumption was 100% of his offseason was focused on him trying to get healthy, then this is going to be a net positive signing. And even if it isn't a net positive signing, even if this flops and Julio Jones gets cut after training camp, well, you still have pretty solid wide receivers going into the season. So I think this is a huge win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and for some reason I just think that this is going to work out for both Tom Brady and for Julio Jones as well. And that's just my gut feeling of having existential dread every time Tom Brady gets himself a former Pro Bowler. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if Julio Jones struggled to stay healthy once again, and this signing becomes a complete non-factor. It could go either way at this point, but regardless, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be fine. If I had to make a prediction, my hunch would be that Tom Brady brings in Julio Jones, has Alex Guerrero do his voodoo pliability stretches, and next thing you know, Julio Jones is promoting TB12 products to the masses. But that's my take on the matter. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers signing Julio Jones? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.